All right, I'm glad to see a lot of you guys here. Um, what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna give you guys about 5 minutes. Um, if you haven't done so, to open up Google Classroom, and so you're gonna open up Google Classroom, go to both of the mock exam assignments, and read through my comments. If you've already done that, like you've already read through my comments, just make sure that you have your exam ready. You have some notes, like somewhere you can take notes ready. Um, and maybe look at your exam and see which questions like were the hardest for you and what you want to go over. Um, but in if you've done all of that for sure, then you can. If you haven't filled out that survey on Classroom, you can do that. But about 5 minutes, just I want to make sure everyone has their exam. Um, so you should have your exam in front of you. And I'd rather you have your exam, but I also do want to make sure just in case. I think one person here actually didn't take the exam or this version. So what I'll do is I'll post the link, the blank link, so you guys have the questions as well. Okay, so if you joined us late, I'm giving you have 3 more minutes to make sure that you've read the comments or you've at least opened it. Um, so you've read the comments on Google Classroom for mock exam question 1 and 2, and that you have your exam out. The comments aren't. Kyra asked me about the comments. The comments are actually, you have to click on the picture. So I commented a lot on your pictures. So I'm not sure 100% how it'll work on your end. Um, but like Kyra, here's yours. So see, the comments are in the pictures. They're not like in the comment section, but you have to actually click on the picture. Yeah, I'll pick on Carlos because he did really well. Carlos got a 5. So again, yeah, this is kind of what your comment should be looking like. So you'll have to click. You might have to click onto your file, like over here. Um, it might even be in your drive. I'm not 100% sure how to access it, to be honest. If you didn't see that, Cassie said you have to open up the image in a new tab. Okay. And then before we start, I just wanted to check on everyone that the homework from last night, and we're not going to go over this question at all today, at least with me, but the homework from last night was this, tiny URL AP sample question. And so they had, this was the A, B, C, D, E, F, G part of it, but then the actual, like the written out part was in the video. So you had to use the video and it had a timer there as well. And then, and to me also, this question I thought was a little bit easier than what we had on our practice exam. I don't know what you guys thought, but I thought this was a little bit easier. Right, this, part A was product rule, part B was trapezoid. Part C was a little bit of the FTC, but also those integral properties, right? Like breaking up integrals, but mostly that FTC. Part D was more FTC. Part E was absolute max, which we're going to go over today. A couple notes I have for you guys on this. Part F, right? Is the rate increasing or decreasing? Would be solving the derivative, seeing if it's positive or negative. And then I believe G was the L'Hopital's. So there's that one. And then their question two is only A, B, and C. So I know ours had A, B, C, D, E. I think that was way too much. I think an ABC or an ABCD is probably what we're going to see. If you have to do the whole separation of variables, right, like the differential equation, then I think that ABC is probably what we would. So, if not, maybe we get a D, but that separation of variables, because it takes so much longer, I think that's kind of there. So, anyways, hopefully you guys did that. If you haven't done that practice exam yet, you can still watch the video and do it. I think it's really, really solid, really good practice. And kind of before we start, but I do want to talk about just very, very briefly is just kind of a little bit of grading, a little bit of how I graded this exam before we go over it. And then, because I know some of you guys were pretty concerned about your grade. So kind of here's the deal for right now is that today, that AP video, they're going to review their exam. Okay, so that was mostly just practice, but part of your homework tonight is going to be to watch that and to correct your exam. Okay, then tomorrow they're going to do another exam. So what I'm going to kind of do for tomorrow is our 8:30 a.m. Zoom is going to be totally optional. Okay. I'm not going to cover anything like brand new in this. Instead, what I'll do in that 8:30 exam is maybe we'll kind of work on, making a little bit of a practice, like, cheat sheet for you, talking about some things that we might expect and some things like that. But it'll be kind of a totally optional Zoom, because what I want the focus for you guys to be on tomorrow is, instead of being ready from 8:30 to 9:30, I want kind of the more mandatory one to be their 11 a.m. Zoom, right? The AP one, because they're going to do another mock exam. And what I will do for this mock exam is that they have their time, right? Like they have, that you have, first they did the 15-minute timer, or the 25-minute timer. And then they did that 5 minutes for uploading. So we'll literally use their timer. So when their video starts, they might go over some stuff, but once they show the question, they gave 25 minutes and then they gave 5 minutes of upload time. So in that 5 minutes of upload time, you guys will upload it to the Google Classroom just like we did. And if you do better on this, right? And then there'll be the second question, right? 15 minutes, 5 minutes of upload time. If you do better on this, I'll just replace your score. So it's just a straight replace. Okay. I'm not going to average them. I'm not going to do anything like that. If you do worse, I'll keep your score. But if you do better, then you just get a replace. Okay. And then, so that's tomorrow. That's Wednesday. On Thursday, the AP is going to do a video going over it. So going over that mock. And I can go over it with you guys as well if you want. And then I want to continue to have just a couple more sessions because there are a few things I want to go over still. So Friday we'll have kind of a regular session, which that's the one I'd kind of want you to attend. But then on Saturday we'll have basically what I'm going to do on Saturday, because it's so close to our exam and the 45 minutes isn't that long. Like what I used to do is I used to do like 4-hour Saturday sessions, and we haven't had the ability to do that because we haven't met. But this Saturday I kind of want to do that. So what I'm going to do on Saturday is actually I'll let you guys sleep in a little bit longer if you want. We can kind of take a vote on what time we start this. But essentially on Saturday, we'll have 2 mocks, and we'll go over them as soon as we submit. So what we're going to do is basically, we'll have the first mock, right? It takes about, with 25 minutes plus 5 is 30, and then 15 plus 5 is 20. So each mock takes about 50 minutes. So the first mock's about 50 minutes. And then I'll try to take less than that to go over it. Like my plan would be, 30-ish to just go over it right then. Like you've submitted it, and then we're going to go over it and review it. And then immediately, maybe like 5-minute, break. You need to go to the bathroom, get some water, get some food. And then immediately we're just going to repeat it with a second mock. So that way, right, kind of the overall session, probably, right, 1 hour plus pretty close to an hour here twice. So the overall session, it'll be about 3 hours long. But you'll get to take 2 mock exams and you'll get to immediately review them. And I think that's very, very valuable, especially this close to our real exam. So I think that's something that'll be really helpful. So that's something just kind of for us. So that's 3 more mock exams, right? The one tomorrow, and then 2 on Saturday. Okay, as far as your grade, what I kind of did and what I'm going to do is that your final exam counts for a very large amount of your grade, right? If you had an A in the class and you get a 1 on the mock exam, it could bring you down to a C or a D. It really, really impacts you. It's very important. But what I'm going to do is that, so we have basically 4 mocks total. And we have the actual AP exam. Right, and I can grade your AP exam now because I'm going to be getting it back. So what I'm going to do is between those 5, I'm going to take your top score out of the 5. Right, whatever your top score of those 5 are, I'm going to take that. And then in addition to that, what I put in the comments on Google Classroom is kind of the AP bonus, which will be if you pass the exam with a 3 or better. So if you pass the actual exam with a 3 or better, and it might be my projection, right? Like I might not actually have like for a fact, like say so-and-so got a 3, but just kind of based on what I'm guessing the point breakdown will be, the other AP teachers are guessing the point breakdown will be. If I'm projecting that you're at a 3, then I'm going to bump your grade by 1 letter grade. So that's pretty much going to guarantee you an A or like a B plus at the lowest. Okay, and then after the exam, I know you guys are stressing. Okay, this should really be our main focus. But after the exam, we basically still have a month left of school, right? That whole month, we just went really, really, really hard. Like I've been giving you guys a lot of homework. That whole month, you're gonna essentially have no homework, but there will be one mini project. It's very, very easy. It'll basically be about an hour or less of your time. Some of the projects can take longer, but you get to choose. So if you wanted to do a longer one, you'd be choosing that. But most of them can be an hour or less, and you have like a whole month. So 1 month to do an hour project is not hard at all. But basically what this is to do is to help your grade. So if you're not happy with your grade, this project will help it. And if you need to help your grade more, then you kind of have to do, more homework, like more projects, right? So like you can do 2 projects, 3 projects. Like if you have a D in the class and you really want to make sure you get to a C, you can do more than 1 project. If you have a B in the class and you really want that A, you can do a few projects and raise your grade. But if you're like, hey, I'm chilling, I have a B over here, I just do my 1 project and then I'm done. So that's that. Okay, so Eileen, I see some talk in the chat about the official scores. So here's kind of how, at least what I know about it so far is that basically, right, Tuesday, like a week from today, May 12th, we're going to take our exam. Okay. Now, I don't know when they're going to send me your tests. They could send it as early as like that next week, but they said that the latest we would get it was something, I forgot exactly what it said in the video. I want to say it was like May 26th or May 28th, something like that. Basically, end of May, right? So that end of May is the latest I would get it. Now, I don't know if they're going to have a scoring guide out. They might just say, here are their exams, but we don't have the points yet, right? You know, like all the answer keys always have that points breakdown, like 1 point for this, 1 point for this. This might be something that I don't have. So I would have to guess at how they do it. Hopefully they give it to us, but I'm gonna guess at it. Yeah, there are a lot of websites that'll guess at it, and other teachers. I'm part of a group online with a lot of other AP teachers, and we'll kind of talk about that and try to figure that out together. So like as a whole, probably those AP teachers will make a good, at least solid guess at this. It might not be perfect, but at least between all of us, hopefully, if we're projecting that you get a 3, right, that means that most likely you'll get a 3, but if we were wrong and you were right on that border, maybe there's a chance that you drop down to a 2 or you bump up to a 4. But most people who we project to get a 3 would probably stay at a 3. Okay, unless you were really on that border and we just, we had a point in A and we had A as worth 3 points, but really it was only worth 2 points, and we had D as worth 2 points and really it was worth 3 points, and you were literally on that border. Otherwise, it should be pretty solid. But that means that if I'm not getting it till the end of May, then I probably wouldn't have that projection for you guys until like that first week in June. I don't know if they're going to be grading it that quickly. It might still be their normal grading, which is giving it back to you guys. I think sometime in July, right, in early July. It still might take them a long time to grade. I'm really not sure how that process is going to work. I don't know if they're going to wait until the makeup exam to then grade everything. I just, those are questions I don't have. So I think that, and I know they're also trying to do things to prevent cheating, right? So they're trying to, do a lot of things with the cheating aspect. So we'll see. Yeah, it does, like some of the I was reading about one teacher teaches in the group I'm in, teaches online, like an online class to kids in like India or somewhere like that. And yeah, their exam was like 2 or 3 in the morning. So anyways, that's kind of enough about that. Now I want to just jump into us actually talking about these questions. So everyone should definitely have their exam out by now. And hopefully you were able to read the comments. If you didn't get to read my comments on your exam, please go back after this and read them. If you need help, let me know, or write in the comments that you need help figuring out how to open that. But I did spend a lot of time trying to put comments on every single person's exam, just to kind of help you to figure out, this is to help you figure out like basically what I thought you specifically needed help with, and maybe why you specifically missed a question or not. So anyways, let's just kind of jump right into it. So I know this was long. I think that we're all in agreement that this is harder than the other mock exams will be, and it's harder than the AP test will be, and that was kind of on purpose, that if your first one is harder, the rest of them hopefully should be easier. So anyways, this first question says, for f prime, the conditions of the mean value theorem are met on the closed interval from 0 to 3. The conclusion of the mean value theorem over 0 to 3 for f prime of x is satisfied at c equals 1. Find f double prime of c. Now, this was a little bit of a strange question in that it was written differently than we're used to. So a lot of us kind of messed up on this, and we did in between 0 and 2. And I think you guys did that because you were either trying to solve and get the like answer of 1, or maybe because 1 was in here. I'm not sure 100%. But they're saying that C is 1. So what we really need to remember about FTC, or sorry, MVT, is let's forget about the fact that this is F prime. Let's just think about MVT in general. Is that MVT essentially says there's some F prime of C that equals to F of B minus F of A over B minus A. And what they're saying is they're saying that this answer, like the C, will end up being 1, but really that's just a distractor for us. That doesn't actually help us solve this at all. And they're saying over the interval from 0 to 3. So they're not saying somewhere in between it. They're not saying it could be between 0 and 2 or 0 and 3 or 2 and 3 or 2 and 5, right? They're saying over that entire interval. So what they're actually asking us for is they're asking us to do it, our A and our B are 0 and 3. So this C equals 1 was really more of a distraction that was just saying that's where it happened. So in this case, instead of F prime of C, we're writing F double prime of C, right? Because we're starting with the first and going to the second. So it'll become F prime of B, which is 3, minus F prime of A, which is 0, over 3 minus 0. And that becomes F prime of 3 is 4, minus F prime of 0 is negative 1, over 3, and so we get 5/3. And that was literally the end of this question. And that's it. Now, if you wanted to write, it's like, if you want to rewrite it, F double prime of C equals 5/3, you can, you don't have to. If you actually wanted to write this as F double prime of 1, technically it's F double prime of 1, because they were telling you that C was 1. Again, you don't have to. It's just something kind of optional. I'm going to cross it out because I don't want you guys to focus on that. But technically, yeah, that 5/3 would be the second derivative at 1 because they told you it happened at C equals 1. So remember when they say like, must there be, right? That's when we're trying to do MVT kind of like on our own. But in this case, if they just tell you to do MVT, then just do it with those endpoints. Okay. So that was, I think a lot of us just kind of messed that one up because we were trying to do something with the one that wasn't there. Okay. If you guys have any questions, just immediately put them in the chat, or just hop on your mic and interrupt me, because that'll help everyone else out. They might have the same questions as you. If you're like, wait, I need you to explain that again, just interrupt me. Okay. B, almost all of us got B right. A couple people did a left ram for some reason. It does say right rem on some, so make sure we're familiar. Right, this width is 2, and then we're gonna use the right side of 1. So you can write, if you want to write 0 to 5 f prime of x dx, you don't have to write this, but that might be nice. Is approximately, I'm going to put in blue what you absolutely have to put, right? So we said it was 2 is the width times 1 was that height. And then again, difference from 2 to 3 is 1, the right side is 4. And then lastly, difference from 3 to 5 is 2, right side is 7. And then you'll just type that into your calculator, do it by hand, whatever you want to do, and you'll get 20. There aren't any units here, so it's just 20. Now, a few of you guys stopped there, but make sure it also asks, is this an over or under approximation? It's a free point. Please don't waste that point. Like, it's a free point, they're giving it to you. So make sure we're answering everything, and it says give a reason. You can't just say it's an over approximation. You have to say why. So anytime it has over under approximation, we want to go back up here to like the stem of our question, the beginning of our question. It should tell us about increasing, decreasing. Maybe concave up, concave down if it was for a tangent line. So it says it's increasing. Now, please don't say it is increasing or the graph is increasing. You need to say whatever is in your integral, whatever you're doing the Riemann sum of. So we need to say f prime of x is increasing. Therefore, you know, it whatever we want to say 20 is an over approximation. You know, because increasing and RRAM. Something like that. Right. Increasing, you can draw it out. I'm going to go on the right side. On the right side, this is above it. So you can draw it out if you don't have it in your notes. I wrote this really funky. That's probably really bad. A lot of you guys wrote this a lot cleaner than I did. You wrote something like over approximation because f prime increasing and RRAM. That's a lot cleaner. I'd probably write it that way. Okay. All right. So 1C, most of the class missed this, and I think it's because we're really relying on our calculator to do our integrals for us, and we're not thinking about U sub. So just kind of remember that like chain rules for derivatives, U sub is for integrals. Anytime we have something other than x, kind of making it funky. So a lot of us did kind of correctly think about if I had the integral of f double prime of x dx, this would become f prime of x. If I don't have endpoints, then yeah, plus c. A lot of us were on that right track, that the integral of f double prime of x would be f prime of x. The issue here is we didn't have x, right? It wasn't x, it was 2x minus 1. So what we're going to have to do here instead is we're going to have to do U sub on this. So if we add, zoom in a little bit, the integral from 2 to 3 of f double prime of 2x minus 1 dx, u is equal to 2x minus 1, and du then becomes 2 dx. That means I have to multiply times 2 inside with the dx and times 1/2 outside, right? Because that's like multiplying the overall by 1. It's not changing it at all. That's how we do U sub. And so then that gives us 1/2 the integral of f double prime of u du. You can either plug in your endpoints, or you can return it back to 2x minus 1. I'll kind of show both ways. I like to plug in my endpoints. So if I plugged in my endpoints, 2 plugging in here, right? 2 times 2 is 4, 4 minus 1 is 3. Plug in 3, 3 times 2 is 6, 6 minus 1 is 5. So this gives us the integral of f double prime would be 1/2 f prime of u from 3 to 5. And then that gives us f prime of 5 is 7. Right, f prime of 5 is 7. So 1/2 times 7 minus f prime of 3 is 4. 1/2 times 4. And you can leave your answer just like that. Like this is final answer correct. Right, if you really wanted to simplify 7/2 minus 2, right? 7/2 minus 4 over 2 is 3/2. But I would have left my answer like that. Now, if you really do want to plug back in, this would have been 1/2 f prime of 2x minus 1, right? Putting the u back with the original endpoints of 2 and 3. And when you plug that in, you'll get the exact same, right? This will still go here. Now, some of you guys did this without u sub. I think Michael's really good at this, about recognizing the patterns. Carlos, I think that whole table is actually pretty good at this. Right, Carlos V, recognizing the patterns of when you have a 2 in here, like with the x, that it basically just pulls out a half. If you're really confident in that, fine. But what happened was so many of us were missing the 1/2 that then you ended up getting the wrong answer. A lot of you guys got the answer of 3. If you got the answer of 3, you were on the right track, but you just missed the 1/2 because you didn't do u sub. A couple of you guys got the answer of 6 because you did chain rule instead of u sub, right? Chain rules for derivatives, u subs for integrals. All right, D. D was the hardest part of this question. D was definitely, I looked at D as kind of the really, really just absolute, like, 5++ question. You could still get a 5 on this and get 0 points on D. And in fact, I think I'd have to double check my my exact numbers, but I think either 2 or 3 of us did get 5s on this exam. And no one got D fully correct. So it says, it is known that the limit as x approaches 0 of 4e to the 6 minus 2f of x can be evaluated using L'Hopital's. Now, this is something I've seen appearing in a lot of practice questions, but it hasn't actually been asked on a real exam. But if we see that wording can be evaluated using L'Hopital's rule, it actually is kind of hinting at us that, and we did one practice question with this a week or two ago. It's hinting at us that actually we need to set it to 0/0 and solve for something. So what's going to happen is that original limit as x approaches 0 of 4e to the 6 minus 2f of x minus f double prime of x squared all over f prime of x plus 1 will end up equaling to 0/0. Now, how do we do a limit? We plug it in. So that means if we plug in 0, 4e to the 6 minus 2f of 0 minus f double prime of 0 squared is 0. Oops. All over. Yeah, and I even messed that up on that. F double prime of 0 isn't in the e part. Minus f double prime of 0 all over f prime of 0 plus 1. This is equal to 0/0. So that means if I needed to figure out what f prime of 0 is, I could set the denominator to 0. We don't, and one person did that, which was cool, but we know f prime of 0 is -1. So we already know, right? -1 plus 1, yeah, that is 0. But we don't know about f double prime of 0, right? We even know f of 0 because it told us it is known that f of 0 equals 3. But we don't know f double prime of 0. Now, I'm going to kind of pause there because you might not know to keep solving this, right? You might keep solving it, which is great, but that's just something we know, right? Now, we also know that it's going to be solved with L'Hopital. So let's say you don't get the point for figuring out, hey, I need to set the top to 0 and figure out I need to solve for that guy. But you do know they told you it got solved by L'Hopital's. So at least, please, 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 this is like 100% going to be a point on the exam, maybe 2 points on the exam of just doing L'Hopital's, right? Rewrite the limit, x approaches 0. Take the derivative of the top, take the derivative of the bottom. This one was tough. It had a weird-ass chain rule. I get it. Just do your best, but at least try. A lot of us just left it blank. And if we see L'Hopital's rule, at least try to apply it because it's a point. You're going to get a point for doing it. So derivative of 4e to the 6 minus 2f of x, right? This is our box, right? So the derivative of 4e to a box is just 4e to that same box, and then times the derivative of the box. Well, the derivative of 6 is nothing. The derivative of 2f of x is negative 2 f prime of x, right? So this is the first part. Then minus, right? If you want to put this in parentheses, that might be good. Minus the derivative of f double prime, and again, of box, right? Well, f double prime is weird, but it's just, single prime, double prime, triple prime. So the derivative of f double prime would become f triple prime of x squared times 2x. I know I kind of ran out of room there. Let me see if I can make that a little smaller by zooming in. So minus f triple prime of x squared times 2x, right? Times 2x because of the chain rule, right? Because essentially that was our box. Then all over, now it's not quotient rule, we're not doing the bottom squared, it's just the derivative of the bottom. The derivative of f prime of x is f double prime of x, and the derivative of the plus 1 goes away. Okay, that was tough. It was definitely challenging, but I think that this is a point that we should expect ourselves to be able to get. Okay, it has a chain rule in there, but we should be able to do chain rule. Okay, so I don't think that that's out of the question that we can't get that right. Do make sure that your primes really are clear when you're taking a picture. That's clearly single prime, that's clearly triple prime, that's clearly double prime. Okay, so that would have been worth 1 point. Actually, really, that was worth 2 points. If you got this fully correct, that was worth 2 points. So they gave you, and I may need to go back and boost a couple grades, I'll see. We're getting 1 point, right? I designated 1 point for applying L'Hopital's rule, and even if you messed up on the chain part, you got 1 point. You got the second point for getting all of the chains correct. So anyways, now, right, if we tried to plug in 0, this gives us 4e to the 6 minus 2f of 0 times negative 2f prime of 0. If you wanted to multiply the negative 2 and the 4 to make negative 8, great. Minus f triple prime of 0, which is scary because we have no idea what that is, but times 2 times 0, that kind of clears it up for us, because when we're multiplying anything times 0, that means that this entire thing goes to 0, which was another tough part about this question. Right, but just realizing, hey, wait, I don't know what f triple prime is, but I'm multiplying it by 0, so it doesn't matter. Okay, now let's keep kind of moving on. This gives 4e to the 6 minus, now, 2f of 0. They told us in the question that f of 0, it's known that f of 0 equals 3. So because we know f of 0 is 3, 2 times 3 will be 6. 6 minus 6 is 0. So that's 4e to the 0, which is just 1, times negative 2, times f prime of 0, right? F prime of 0 is in the table. It's that negative 1. So times 2 times negative 1, right? And then minus 0. So that part goes away. All over f double prime of 0. Now this is where we're running into the issue, is we need to plug in f double prime of 0, but we don't know what it is. So that's where you actually have to come back up here to solve it. So what they did is they told us this can be evaluated using L'Hopital's rule, right? I highlighted that in yellow. What that's kind of telling you you're going to have to do is take the original limit and set either the numerator, or it could have been the denominator, to 0 to solve for something, right? So what I have highlighted in yellow, that's kind of what it's hinting to me at. So what we're going to do is we're going to take that 4e. Now, we just established that this was 4e to the 0, right? Because when we plug in f of 0 as 3, we get 6 minus 6. So 4e to the 0 minus f double prime of 0 equals to 0, because we know it's going to have to do L'Hopital's rule, right? It has to be 0 to make it 0 over 0. So 4e to the 0 is just 4. Add the f double prime over. 4 equals f double prime of 0. So now we know what f double prime is 0. And coming back here, right, to f double prime of 0, we can write that as there we go. We can write that as 4. So then this gives us, right, 4e to the 0 is 1 times 4 times positive 2, ends up being 8 over 4, and that gives us an answer of 2. So this question was definitely really tough, okay? And it was worth 4 points. Getting a 4 out of 4 here, I think was not something I expected anyone in the class to do. But I think getting 2 points by taking this derivative on the right side, I think is something that a lot of us really can do. And some of us did get that. And that's literally just this one single line here. Is just that application of L'Hopital's rule and doing chain rule. Even getting 1 point here just by trying to do L'Hopital's rule and messing up your chain rule, everyone should have gotten 1 point for trying it. Then doing it correctly was a 2nd point. So 2 out of 4 on a question this hard is not bad. And this was a hard question. So to get 2 out of 4 is a huge win. So my key here is we see L'Hopital's, just do it, right? It's going to be worth a point, maybe 2. Then if you do end up seeing that weird thing I highlighted in yellow, then now we know how to attack it, okay? All right, part E. The function k is defined by f of x, k of x equals f of x over 2x plus 5. This is just quotient rule, okay? Some of you guys messed up quotient rule. If you messed it up, make sure you go over it. Right, low, d high, some of you guys just switched the order. So low, 2x plus 5. D high would be f prime of x. Right, I'll put that in parentheses, minus high, f of x. D low, derivative of the bottom is 2, all over 2x plus 5 all squared. Now I want to talk about something. Notice that I wrote k prime of x, not k prime of 0. Okay, k prime of x, because I still have x's here. I haven't plugged in for 0 yet. Don't try to skip steps. The other thing I want to point out is this parentheses, right? I used a lot of parentheses. I did a parentheses for every single item. A lot of you guys were missing the parentheses around the 2x plus 5. You did it correctly, but you didn't write in that parentheses. You will get the question wrong, okay? Or at least you'll lose a point. So you need to have that parentheses. It's important for PEMDAS. It's important for writing out correctly, okay? So now we can plug in 0 and we can say, okay, k prime of 0, and now we plug it in. 2 times 0 is 0, so I'm going to get 5. F prime of 0 was negative 1. Minus f of 0 they gave was 3 times 2. All over 2 times 0 is 0 plus 5 squared is 25. So that's negative 5 minus 6 is negative 11 over 25. I think that's very doable for us. Okay, we just need to make sure we're remembering the order of quotient rule. And F, a lot of us got 2, 3, even 4 points. F was tricky, and I'm going to talk about it. But, right, we have dy dx equals 3 minus 2y. F double prime of x, we want to move our y's to one side or x's to the other side. So there's a parentheses here. We can't add 2y. We have to divide by the whole thing because it's blocked by its parentheses. So divide both sides by 3 minus 2y and multiply both sides by dx. that's worth 1 point just for separating, right? So when we get 1 over 3 minus 2y dy equals f double prime of x dx, that's worth 1 point. Then each antiderivative is a second point. Now, the one on the left is a little trickier. A lot of you guys, I could tell, did it on your calculator. And if you did on your calculator, you got negative 1/2 ln of, instead, 2 minus 3y. Okay. I don't know if the AP exam is going to give you the point or not. I really don't know. I'm not grading it personally. But notice that this got flipped. Okay. I really don't want you to flip that. So if you're getting that, just try to like double check, hey, wait, is it actually flipped? Let me look at U sub. The reason they're flipping it, oh wait, they 2y minus 3. But yeah, still. So they flip the order. The reason they're flipping it is because of the absolute value sign. They're saying, hey, there's an absolute value here, so it might just be easier to flip it. But then all of your C values are going to be different than what's written, and it complicates things. So if you can, just kind of double check, wait, do I have to flip that? Is that something I want to be doing? So if we do U sub, right, because, hey, like even if you do your integral to get the ln, that might be a hint for you. Oh, it's ln. Let me just try to do U sub here. So U would have been 3 minus 2y. The du would become negative 2 dy. So multiply times negative 2 inside times negative 1/2 outside. That gives negative 1/2 integral of 1 over u du, which the integral of 1 over u is ln of u. So I'm going to just kind of skip a step and make this negative 1/2 ln of u, but instead of u, what's u? 3 minus 2y. Then equal to, so that was 1 point for that. If you wrote it the way your calculator wrote it, I still gave you the point. Then on the right side, integral of f double prime is just f single prime of x plus c. You got 1 point for the left, 1 point for the right. If you forgot the c, you still got the point. Now, I want to talk about this. If they say solve for y, right, what are they asking? Use a separation of variables to write an expression for h of x. If they say solve for y equals h of x, you need to isolate the y. If they just say expression and don't mention for y equals, you actually don't have to isolate the y. So a lot of times it's actually easiest, I know it's weird, but it's actually easiest to plug in for your initial condition, like your 0 and your 1, right here at the beginning before you try to isolate y. It actually ends up being a lot less complicated. A lot of you guys got weird decimals and end up getting confused somewhere and not quite getting to the final answer. And it's actually way easier to just go ahead and just plug it in right here. So I'm going to kind of do that is, if you want to multiply both sides by -2, that's great, like times -2 times -2. But I'm not even going to do that. I'm just going to plug in right here. So negative 1/2 ln of 3 minus 2 times the y is 1 equals f prime of 0 plus c. So that's negative 1/2 ln of 1 equals f prime of 0. We've done on our table a bunch of times, but was negative 1 plus c. Ln of 1 goes to 0. You can type it in your calculator if you forget. So we get 1 equals to c. So that means our expression is negative 1/2 ln of 3 minus 2y equals f prime of x plus 1. And that's the answer, right? That is the correct answer. You get the full points because they didn't say solve for y equals. Now, if they had said solve for y equals, could we have isolated y now? Yes, but just, so you can always plug it in early if you want. But just being careful, right? If I multiply both sides by -2, ln of 3 minus 2y. By the way, you have to multiply by -2. Some of you guys did just 2. You need to get rid of that negative because you're trying to isolate the whole ln. So if I multiply by -2, just being careful that you do multiply by the c because now it is a number. right? And then e to this, that would cancel. 3 minus 2y equals e to the negative 2f prime of x minus 2. Oh, wait, yeah, it's still up here because it's e to everything, right? We can't take the c down because it's now a number. Then subtract by 3, negative 2y equals negative 3 plus that e to the negative 2f prime of x minus 2. If you wanted to put the e first and then minus 3, you can. And divide both sides by negative 2. So that divided by negative 2. Now, you didn't have to do any of that. Okay, some of you guys did, and that's great. But we actually didn't have to because they said, like I said, if they say solve for y equals, you need to isolate the y. If they don't say that, you actually don't even need to isolate the y. Now it says use this expression to find h of 2. So that last step, which a lot of us didn't have time for, is to go back and just plug in, right? 3 minus 2y. Plug in for x, 2, f prime of 2 plus 1. So f prime of 2 on our table is 1. So that means we have negative 1/2 ln of 3 minus 2y equals 1 plus 1 is 2. All right, and I'm going to erase this so we have a little more room. Multiply both sides by negative 2. So that gives ln of 3 minus 2y equals negative 4. E to both sides. That cancels. 3 minus 2y equals e to the negative 4. Right? I'll write this over here. 3 minus 2y equals e to the negative 4. Subtract by 3. And divide by 2. So e to the negative 4 minus 3 all over negative 2. Okay. You can type that in your calculator, get a decimal, and check if you had a decimal answer, if it was the same. But I don't know about like getting to these 5th and 6th points, right? The two things I had boxed though are only 2 points. And I think so many of us can get at least 4 points on this, right? It was 1 point literally for separating it. So what I have in green right there, that was 1 point. Then it was a 2nd point for, let's use a better color. It was a 2nd point for taking this integral here. It was a 3rd point for taking that side integral, the f prime of x part. You don't even need the plus c actually. Just the f prime of x part was a 3rd point. And then it's a 4th point for plugging in 1 and 0. That's a 4th point. So 4 points right there without even getting the final answer correct. That's super easy. It's just making sure that we're ready for it. Okay. All right. I know I'm totally running very slow, but this question's a lot faster. I'll go through it as fast as I can. If you do have to leave, I understand. I told you guys 9:30, but I promise we'll be done in the next 10, 15 minutes tops, but I'm shooting for 10. Okay. There are a lot of important things that I want to make sure we do. So first thing, I've told you guys this a bunch of times, and I think maybe we didn't because it was written differently. It said the function g is an antiderivative of f. What that means is it essentially means that g of x is equal to some kind of integral of f of x. Now, they're not giving endpoints, but they did give this. But essentially, that's what we're seeing, is g of x is an antiderivative of f of x. So the big thing that I've told you guys a bunch of times is once we get that on all of these questions, to write g prime of x equals f of x, and to write g double prime of x equal to f prime of x. You cannot justify your answer without having that written. So many of us were trying to do that, and we cannot justify our answer without that. Okay, this is very important. And actually, on this question, this was a point. Some of you guys wrote the 2nd line and not the 1st line. I don't know why. Write them both. Okay. So any time we get one of these graphs, you know, F graph, F prime graph, whatever it is, make sure that if this is applicable, that we're writing that out. It's that important. Like it needs to happen. Now, we'll put this on a cheat sheet somewhere, but I want to go over it one more time. I've gone over it, but we just need to go over it. Is that when we have these graphs, right? This is the graph of F, but essentially it's the graph of F equals G prime, right? So really we're looking at, this is the graph of a derivative. This is a very common stem, meaning a very common setup. So this G prime graph analysis, essentially what we know is that if we're looking for any type of a max, any type of a min, any type of a critical point, what we're looking for is we're looking for on the graph, we're looking for the zeros. And then we're looking for where does it change between positive and negative to figure out like maxes and mins, right? So we'd say where does G prime of X equal to F of X? Where does that equal 0? Where does that change between positive and negative? For inflection points, and even for concave up and concave down, right? Now we're looking for where does the graph we're looking for where does the graph have those like, you know, maximum, minimum corners, horizontal tangents, right? That's kind of our starting point, is where does it have that, you know, any of those max, mins, kinks, corners. That's kind of what we're starting with, okay? But what we're going to justify with is where does the graph change between increasing and decreasing, right? Where does G prime of X equal to F of X change between increasing and decreasing? Now, if you do want, you'll get points for doing G double prime equals F prime, switches positive and negative. But because we don't have a graph of that, I like to do increasing and decreasing with this. So on here, what are our possible inflection points? Okay, well, those would be where we have those kinks and corners like I just talked about, max, min, kink, corner. So 0 is 1, 1 is 1, and a lot of you guys forgot the next one. 3 is a minimum, right? Horizontal tangents count here. It's decreasing, now it's increasing. And technically 5 is a possible inflection point because it's a kink, but we can get rid of it because it increases and then keeps increasing. So if you wanted to identify 5 as a possibility, you could write that in. It's not really going to be a point, right? You could, but it's not really going to be a point. So what we're going to say is our inflection points occur at X equals 0, 1, and 3. The easiest explanation is just to say because F prime of X equals G of X, sorry, I wrote that backwards. G prime of X equals F of X switches between increasing and decreasing, or vice versa at these points. Now, probably a little bit of a better explanation. I'll do another color. A little bit of a better would probably be to say like, for our because, so for X equals 0, and 3, G prime equals F goes from decreasing to increasing. I'm not going to write it out fully. And then at X equals 1, G prime equals F goes from increasing to decreasing. That might be a little better to be specific, but you'll still get the point for writing it that way. All right, find the minimum. Here's the deal with this question. It takes a long time, so I understand why a lot of us skipped it, okay? It does take a long time, but the deal is that as soon as you see the word minimum, absolute minimum, minimum, whatever it is, 100% guaranteed that whatever you're finding the minimum of, just writing this is 1 point, okay? And it like made me the saddest that on this exam, hardly anyone got that point. right? When I went down the list out of like 27 people who turned this in, it was like 5-ish got the point for that. That should be 27 out of 27 getting that point. I don't care if you get any other points on this, part B, like write that down and just move on if you want to, right? Come back to it later because you know it's going to take a while. But you absolutely, absolutely, absolutely need to get that point. It says minimum, just set the derivative to 0. It's going to be worth a point, and it's a free point. You don't even have to solve it. You just literally write it, and you get a point. Okay? Now, where does g prime equal 0? Right? And if you want to, even better, right? This is good, but even better would have been to write g prime of x equals f of x equals 0, because now you're connecting it to our graph, and that makes it easier to find. So where does the graph have zeros? It has a 0 at 1, and it has a 0 at 5. So x equals 1 and 5. Now, because it's on an interval, we're not doing a number line here. We're doing a table. So we're doing x and g of x, and our points are -4, +1, +5, and 7. Now, you have to at least identify those as candidates, okay? Some of you guys wanted to just jump straight to 5, and I understand why. If you make a number line, -4, 1, 5, 7, it goes decreasing, decreasing, increasing. So 5 has to be the minimum based on that. But you have to specifically say, like, -4 cannot be the minimum because it decreases from -4 to -1. Or 1 cannot be the minimum because it decreases from 1 to 5. And 7 can't because it decreases from 5 to 7. You have to explicitly say why you're getting rid of each point. So unless you're really good at that, I'd honestly rather you just make the table. Okay, it's just a little bit easier. So making the table, they gave us g of 1 equals to 4. So we know that's given. So to get all of our other points, we're going to just plug it in by doing an integral. So g of -4 equals g of 1 plus the integral from 1 to -4 of g prime of x dx, which is f of x, right? We're doing the 1's match up and the -4's match up. That's kind of like that generic formula. So g of -4 equals g of 1 we said was 4 plus the integral from 1 to -4. So starting at 1, going back to -4 gives 2 triangles, right? Or even just one big triangle. I'm going to actually write that just as one big triangle. A lot of you guys split it up into 2, but technically it's just one big triangle. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So the width of that is 5. The height going down is 2. So 1/2 times 5 times 2 gives 5. But because it's below the axis, it would be negative, but we're going backwards, right? We're going from right to left. So it would have been -5, but because we're going backwards, it flips it back to +5. So this is 9. Okay. Then for 5, g of 5, I'll do in another color. G of 5, same thing, equals g of 1, which I'm going to just write as 4, plus the integral from 1 to 5 of g prime of x dx. Okay, for that integral, now we're going forwards. So now it is going to be a negative if it's below and positive if it's above. It doesn't flip because we're going forwards. We're starting, right? We're starting at 1. So this is a semicircle. So the area of a semicircle is 1/2 pi r squared, and r here is from the center over is 2. So 2 squared. Okay, so that's 4. 4 divided by 2 is 2, so we get 2 pi. So this is 4 minus 2 pi because it was below the axis. Some of you guys put plus, it's below the axis. So 4 minus 2 pi. And for 7, g of 7, kind of same deal, is 4 plus the integral from 1 to 7 of g prime of x dx, but we kind of already know that we're going to have 4 minus 2 pi and then just plus whatever the extra is, right? Because this first part, I'll kind of put in red, this, we're starting at 1, we're going to 7. So this first part we already knew was negative 2 pi. So now we just need the extra triangle. So 1/2 times 2 is just 2. So this is 4 minus 2 pi plus 2, so that gives us 6 minus 2 pi. Okay, so this here, doing that whole table deal, all of this so far was 3 points. You would have got 3 points. And then the fourth point is just picking out the minimum. Well, looking at it, right, the small one is 4 and 4 minus 2 pi. If we're subtracting from 4, that has to be smaller. So we'll say the minimum is 4 minus 2 pi at x equals 5, and then that's the last point. Okay. All right. Going through this, C, we got a couple questions left. C, again, a lot of you guys tried to plug in -1 too soon. Don't plug it in before you do h prime of x. Write h prime of x first, right? That's the first thing we want to write. And then we're going to take the derivative, right? Well, the derivative of 3x is 3. And I've done this so many times where I circle this and I say, if we need to do chain rule, do chain rule. And a lot of us forgot. We just put f of 2x, right? You need to do chain rule if it's anything other than x. So this becomes times 2 times f of 2x, right? The 2 is because it wasn't just x, so we had to do chain rule on it. So that means that h prime of x is 3 minus 2f of 2x, right? Writing it with the x is important first, especially since we're going to do it with the second derivative. We want to have a formula. Now let's plug in -1. 3 minus 2 times f of, when we plug in -1, we get f of -2. Well, we have a graph for f, right? This is the graph of f. We don't have to do any derivative. We don't have to do any slope. It wants f. We have f. So at -2, this looks like it's at -1. And you could even, count with the slope and make sure. So this is 3 minus 2 times -1, which is 3 plus 2, which is 5. Okay. Now, same thing, but now we need to do the second derivative. So first, we're going to write it as h double prime of x and doing it with x's. Well, where are we going to get this from? We're going to do the derivative of that one. Derivative of 3 is 0. The derivative of -2f of 2x, right? Well, what would be the derivative of f of x? Would be f prime of x. But if we have f of 2x, then that's a box. So we need to do f prime of the box, 2x, times 2. But don't forget that -2 is leading it. That's a coefficient. So it's -2 f prime of 2x times 2. You can just leave it like that. Some of you guys decided to go -4 f prime of 2x. That's cool also. Okay. Now, for h double prime of -1, now we want f prime of -2. Well, f prime, we have the graph of f, right? Remember that if we have the graph of f, then, right, like f of something would just be the y value, right? F prime of something would be the slope, and if we need to do an integral, we're usually doing area under the curve. So we want the slope of this line. Well, if we look at it, I like to just do the overall endpoints. It's easy, right? This is down 2 over 4, right? Down 2 over 4. Here it was down 1 over 2. Either way, we're getting a slope of down 1/2, right? Down 2 over 4 simplifies to -1/2. So this is -4 times -1/2, which becomes +2. All right. Okay, D. So D is super, super easy, but you gotta do the 3 rules, okay? I took off so many points on this because people just plugged it in. They're like, yeah, it's continuous. This is not a multiple choice question. If they ask about is something continuous on our exam is free response, you need to just do those 3 rules. Carlos Garcia, I'm not sure if you're in the chat, but Carlos Garcia did an awesome job at writing them out like that. And I think that's perfect, right? Just do the 3 rules. Don't leave any doubt of what you're doing. So rule 1, right? Do the limit from both sides, right? So the limit as x approaches 0 from the left, you cannot just write equals. That's like writing square root equals. That makes no sense. You need to have the limit of something. So the limit, either you could have written f of 3x minus x. I'm just going to write as k of x, like the limit of k of x on the left side, right? That's left. Equals f of 3 minus 0 equals f of 3, which on our graph, if we go to f of 3, 1, 2, 3 is negative 2 is the y value. So this equals to negative 2. Okay. Don't just write the limit as x approaches 0 equals negative 2. Like, don't skip this middle stuff. That middle stuff is showing them, maybe you could skip that there, but that middle stuff is showing them that you know how you got the answer. Then the limit as x approaches 0 from the right side of k of x just equals f of 0. And if we look on our graph, f of 0 is also at negative 2. Now, don't stop here, right? Why are we doing the left and right limits? Because this means because of both of these, now that tells us, therefore, the limit as x approaches 0 of k of x, not from the left, not from the right, equals negative 2, right? If they're both negative 2, then you want to write. Don't write it exists, write what it is. You need to be showing them that you know the overall limit is negative 2. Now, if you want to add the word exists, great. But you need to have written that it was negative 2. Second rule, okay? K of 0 exists. So what is K of 0? Well, K of 0 is whichever one had the equal sign on it. So K of 0 equals f of 3 minus 0 minus 0. You're basically just rewriting what you did for the limit without the word limit. So this is f of 3, which is also negative 2. So again, you wrote, if you want to even rewrite it, rewrite this as, K of 0 equals negative 2, and you want to write the word exists, great. Okay. And lastly, the third one is the main one, but we had to write the first 2, is we want to show that K of 0 equals the limit as x approaches 0 of K of x. Now, we did that because we wrote that they were both negative 2 and negative 2. So it's obvious. But if you want to just hammer it in, just write negative 2 equals negative 2. You're hammering that back home. Now that we've done all 3, now we can write, therefore, K of x, or K, just rewrite what they said, K is continuous at x equals 0. But be careful. When I say be clear about how you write this, so many of you guys had mishmash stuff. Maybe had some of it, maybe didn't, maybe did limits, maybe didn't, maybe it's hard to tell. It's not that hard to just go 1, 2, 3, show the grader, hey, I really know what I'm doing, give me full points. You don't want the grader to be trying to figure out what you did. You want the grader to know, hey, this person really knows their math, they're getting full credit. Okay, and then lastly, this one's very quick. As soon as we see is the speed increasing, decreasing, or neither, all we need to do is just figure out what is v of 1/2 and what is a of 1/2, right? Why 1/2? Because that's what they wanted to do. So are these positive or negative? Okay, now they told us v equals f of t. So you don't have to write what I'm about to put in green, but it's nice, is that v of 1/2 equals f of 1/2, right? That's kind of nice. If you didn't write that, you'd still get the point. So v was equal to this f of 1/2. Now, at 1/2, it is kind of hard to see, is it exactly -1 or not? Some of you guys guessed it was -1. Some of you guys like proved it was -1. Some of you guys were just like, it's negative. Just make sure that you state it's negative. If you don't, it is -1, so it's less than 0. Okay, if you want to say it's less than 0, then just add, without putting -1, add because it's below the axis. It is -1 because if you look at the slope is going up to over 1. So because it's going up to over 1, then at half it had to have gone up 1, if that kind of makes sense. Now for a of 1/2, you do need to write that it's equal to v prime of 1/2. You have to write that. Okay, that's very, very important that you wrote a of half equals v prime of half. Now, if you wanted to also connect that to f, it's a good idea, right? So that's equal to f prime of half. Again, if you wrote either one of those, really you're in the clear, either one of those. And this equals to the slope. We just talked about the slope, right? Why is it the slope? Because f prime, right? V prime, f prime. So we just talked about the slope. Now, some of you guys did weird things for your slope. You tried to do like the slope between 1 and 3 or something. I don't know why. But where is 1/2? 1/2's right here. So it's the slope of this part of our curve. So it's the slope of that line there. So the slope of that line there, we can just kind of count, right? Rise over run. The rise is 2, the run is 1, so the slope is 2. Now, if you wanted to do, yeah, sure, this is at 1, 0, and 0, -2, and do y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1, you'll get 2. So here we're going to write equals 2, and we're going to put greater than 0. It's important that we write less than 0 and we write greater than 0. Okay, that's important to show them that we know what we're about to write. Now we're going to say, therefore, the speed is decreasing, right, because they were opposite signs, at time equals 1/2. We want to have that at time equals 1/2 because v of 1/2 was less than 0 and a of 1/2 is greater than 0. That's really full credit. You can stop there. If you want to, write opposite signs, you can. Okay. If you want to write v of half and a of half have opposite signs, you showed the work, you'd be good. Okay. So that's really all we got here. I know that was tough. It was a tough exam. But be proud of yourselves. Even if you got a 1 on this exam, be proud of yourself for taking it, for being in this meeting right here. That's something to be proud of. I promise you guys, just from experience, that if you start here and you really focus on what you need to work on, even though there's a week left, your grades are going to go up. I had a student 2 years ago who got a 1 on every single mock exam, and then she got a 3 on the real thing, right? And it was because she took every mock exam, she went through it, she looked at her mistakes, and she basically figured out what she needed to do. So it is totally possible, but it's up to you guys at that point, right? So there's that. Anyways, yeah, talk to your other teachers. Like if you have Miss Roque, I'll email her. If you guys have other Zoom stuff, I'll email the senior teachers that this is like your AP prep week, and there's some College Board mock exams and things like that. So I'll email them and see what we can do. But really believe in yourselves. I believe in you guys. You guys are here. That's like step 1. Like I said, this is going to be the hardest mock exam that we take. So it should get easier from here. I can't totally promise that because I'm not writing the AP one for tomorrow. But yeah, anyways, that's my spiel. So tonight, the main homework is going to be to just watch that video. But what I'm also going to kind of open up, and I just want to show this right before we leave, it'll take 20-30 seconds, is I do have a file, and this, I think Jesus R had emailed me about wanting some extra practice as well. Um, so I have a file that um, that basically goes through and says, okay, area and volume questions we should skip, but the table questions are on page 41. Analyzing graphs, right? F prime, which we were kind of doing, page 54. Slope fields, page 60. Related rates, page 71. Accumulation is usually like rate in, rate out, page 78. Implicit, page 92. Particle motion, like velocity, all that stuff, page 98. Charts of F prime, those are less common nowadays. And miscellaneous stuff, page 114. So these are all just FRQs with the answers. And it's totally optional, but it's kind of something that if you want to read through them and just try to read them and understand them, read them and understand them, it's one of the best things you can do is to read and understand the FRQs. So what I am going to do, and this is very, very easy, but what I'm going to kind of do is for each one of those that you complete, I'll give you a tiny bit of extra credit. So the more you do, the more extra credit you'll get. Now, by completing them, what I would want you guys to do is, look at this one, just kind of zoom in on your phone or whatever so that you're not looking at the answers. Do it in pencil and then correct it in pen, and I'll give you some extra credit. If you would rather just legit just read them, that's great practice too. It's just good practice. So this is kind of extra, right? If you want this, I'm going to post this file kind of as optional extra. You have it. You have a bunch of free response to look at. But the main homework tonight is you should have done the mock exam yesterday. You're going to watch the video today. It doesn't have to be at 11 today. It can be at any time today. You watch that video and you correct your answer. What you're going to post is you're going to post your corrections into the classroom. Make sense? All right, I'll let you guys go. We do have another Zoom tomorrow morning, but remember it's optional because the main mandatory thing tomorrow is you're going to take the mock with the AP video at 11. Okay?
What's the chance of us passing this test?
Is that Jesus Aguilera?
No.
Damn it.
I don't think you noticed me earlier. You started talking about Roque while I was over here talking about my professor.
I saw Jesus in the chat, and I totally my brain just read it as Jesus Juarez.
Damn, I could have gotten away with a lot more then.
Yeah, I saw you in the chat a few times, and I was totally just reading you as Juarez. That's really funny.
I've been here for the past 30 minutes.
That's hilarious. Yeah, well, the chance of you passing Jesus would be 100%.
Easy clap, dude. You guys got this. Don't trip.
That's funny. All right, well, thanks for being here, guys. What's up, Jesus? Good to see you. And I got to take off, but have a good day, guys.
Take care, y'all.